Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are wrestling with a really fundamental problem. I mean, it's something that plagues every large, high-stakes organization you can think of, from global corporations managing these impossibly complex supply chains to, well, major military commands operating under just immense pressure.
And the problem, it's really quite simple when you boil it down.
It is.
How do you move past the mountain of static reports, the endless rows on a spreadsheet, the binary checkboxes?
Yes, the green, red, amber charts.
Exactly. How do you move past that to truly understand the context, the trajectory, and maybe most importantly, the true risk of a complex, evolving operation?
It's a crisis of information overload, but with a total lack of actionable insight.
That's it. And our sources today, they detail a solution developed within the U.S. Army, Europe and Africa USAREUR-AF.
Okay.
Specifically to address the unique dynamic readiness challenges they face along the Eastern Flank Deterrence Line.
Or EFDL.
The EFDL, yeah. They call this concept the Compounding Knowledge Assessment Model.
And the EFDL, for you listening, you really need to picture this. It's not just some static line on a map.
No, not at all.
It's a multinational, incredibly fluid deterrence environment. It stretches thousands of miles across allied nations like Poland and Romania, and it demands constant synchronization against some highly sophisticated and evolving threats.
And your standard reporting mechanisms, they just can't keep up. They can't handle that level of complexity, that volatility.
Or chance.
Precisely. And that's really why this model is so interesting. It's a proposed system designed to, cut through all that bureaucratic noise.
How does it do it?
It leverages three key components. First, structured human input. Through things they call rubrics.
Rubrics, okay.
Second, a completely unique weighting mechanism they call criticality factors. And third, sophisticated Llama-based AI agents to process the whole thing.
So our mission in this deep dive is to really unpack this entire system. How does this methodology transform assessment from being just, a backward-looking report card?
Yeah, telling you what went wrong last week.
Right, into a proactive, forward-framing tool that actually dictates where you should be spending your resources tomorrow.
It's a real philosophical shift. As the sources point out, it's about moving away from what they call the science of assessment.
Which is just counting stuff.
It's just counting things, counting equipment, personnel, dollars. You're moving from that to truly assessing operational readiness, which requires judgment, context, prioritization.
The art.
That is the art of command assessment. It's about understanding the relationship between your effort and your effect, but in real time. Okay,
so let's unpack this by first diagnosing the patient. Why did the traditional, the seemingly standard metrics, the spreadsheets and key performance indicators, KPIs, why did they fail in an environment like the Eastern Flank?
Right.
I mean, everyone uses them. They seem so objective.
Well, they are objective, but they are also exclusionary, and that's the core limitation. It's what the sources identify as the logic barrier.
The logic barrier, okay.
Traditional assessment systems, particularly in these huge military organizations, they're built on highly complex logic formulas. And to feed the data correctly, you need what they call a formulaic mindset.
Give me an analogy here, because formulaic mindset sounds a bit like high-level bureaucratic jargon. What does that actually mean for the staff officer on the ground?
Okay, think about a large global company running, say, thousands of projects. Your field engineers are brilliant. They're experts at building the product, managing construction, highly specialized in operations.
Right, they do the real work.
They do the real work. But the corporate reporting system requires them to input their status using this unbelievably complex financial accounting structure. They're tracking earned value, critical path dependencies, all using specific codes and sequences.
So you're forcing operational experts to become reporting experts in a system that wasn't built for them.
You've got it. You've created the logic barrier. If the staff who are actually responsible for the reporting, the operational units, the logistical hubs, if they don't have that kind of graduate level logic reasoning the system demands,
they struggle.
They struggle. They either submit insufficient data, or even worse, they submit data that is technically wrong because they just couldn't structure the input correctly to fit the formula.
And that dramatically limits who can effectively contribute. Okay. It has to reduce the quality and the diversity of the information that's flowing up the chain.
It does.
If the barrier to entry is that high, You only get reliable input from a tiny group of highly trained analysts who are sitting, miles away from the actual operation.
And that fundamentally undermines the entire assessment. You absolutely need that granular, contextual understanding that only comes from the staff on the front lines.
Of course.
If they can't participate effectively, the assessment just lacks the depth you need to make strategic decisions. This barrier is often the hidden culprit behind why these things fail.
And even when the data does manage to clear that logic barrier, it often falls right into what the sources call the binary trap.
Yes.
The standard KPIs, the metrics we all know and love, right? They typically output a yes-no, a green-red, a 100% complete.
It looks great on a slide.
It looks fantastic on an executive summary slide, but it's strategically devastating in a nuanced environment like the EFDL.
Devastating is the right word, because that binary output, it hides the context, and context is the only thing that actually matters in deterrence.
Right.
If a report says operational capacity is 80%, amber status, what does that actually mean? A spreadsheet might tell you the number of operational vehicles went down by 5. That's a failure, but it absolutely fails to tell you why.
Was it a funding shortfall?
Right.
A parts delay from some vendor in Germany? Or were those 5 vehicles just reassigned to another mission? You have no idea.
Exactly. The status indicator tells you success or failure, but it never offers the root cause. And without that why, the commander can't fix the problem. They just know they have one.
Which leads directly to this inability of traditional systems to handle context versus crisis. When the data is unweighted, everything just shows up as equally important on the spreadsheet. If you're looking at 100 red metrics, how on earth do you know which one is the true operational crisis versus just minor bureaucratic friction?
You can't. And this is the danger of treating data as, monolithic. A minor administrative error, say a unit submitting the wrong expenditure print for fuel, easily corrected.
But it shows up red.
It shows up bright red. And it looks identical on the dashboard to a major logistics failure, like a critical fuel depot running completely dry, or an essential bridge on a supply route being out.
They both just generate a red metric.
They do. But one is a risk to the campaign's timeline, and the other is a risk to its survival. Without that differentiation, the command staff spends its finite time, its cognitive bandwidth, addressing all the noise, the minor stuff, while the true operational risk, the signal, gets totally obscured.
So the whole thesis of this compounding knowledge model is that to command effectively, you have to separate the signal from the noise.
And that separation can only be achieved by assigning strategic weight to the data before it gets aggregated and assessed.
So if the old model fails because it's exclusionary, that's the logic barrier, it lacks narrative depth, the binary trap, and it offers no prioritization, the unweighted data.
Then you need a new system that is inclusive, demands context, and pre-prioritizes everything for the commander.
And this brings us to the core structural change in the model, the rubric.
Right.
The sources describe it as a replacement for those rigid formulas. So instead of asking a staff officer to, contort their reality to fit some algorithm, the rubric just offers guided criteria that ask for structured, subjective human input.
It completely standardizes the input mechanism. You're moving from asking, can you calculate your readiness scheme, to just asking, can you describe your current circumstances?
A huge difference.
It is. It captures that structured human judgment that's necessary. We're acknowledging that, look, human expertise is required to assess complexity, but we're imposing a framework so the AI can effectively parse and compare that judgment.
And the framework is deceptively simple, but from what I'm reading, incredibly powerful. It's the 5 W's format.
Who, what, where, when, why.
That's the mechanism for standardizing it all.
Absolutely. To receive full marks, or just to contribute accurately, the staff officer has to narrate the current situation using all 5 of those elements. And the why is the absolute essential component.
That's what fills the contextual void left by the binary trap.
It is. This is the difference between simply reporting a status and providing genuinely actionable intelligence.
Can you walk us through that specific example again?
Sure. So instead of a standard report that just flashes supply is red, the rubric demands context. The input might read something like, logistics teams who failed to move Class 3 fuel supplies, across the border, crossing near Sawaki, where, on Monday morning.
And then the crucial part.
Because the host nation police were conducting an unscheduled, hours-long counter-smuggling exercise that blocked all traffic.
Why? See, why? The police exercise, that's the actionable insight. The commander isn't worried about the fuel itself so much as the failure of coordination with the host nation. That's the systemic flaw you have to address.
Exactly. It makes the human input vastly easier for the operator to provide and infinitely richer for the commander to use. And once that input is captured, the system applies what they call layer 1, the status spectrum.
This is the performance rating. So against the specific criteria in the rubric line, you get high, medium, or low.
Correct. High means you meet or exceed the criteria. Medium, you've made significant progress, but critical capability gaps are still there. Low means the capability is largely non-existent or, completely compromised.
Familiar terms, but now they're backed by that narrated context.
Mm-hmm.
And the system has these two built-in guardrails, the fail and superior indicators.
And these are crucial triggers. The fail indicator, it acts as an automatic system alert if essential conditions are violated. For instance, if the rubric says you need 24/7 continuous sensor coverage and the staff input shows a 2-hour gap because a generator failed.
It doesn't matter how good the other 22 hours were.
Doesn't matter at all. The system instantly marks it as a fail. It flags immediate unacceptable risk. And conversely, the superior indicator, it flags best practices or exceptional capability beyond the base requirement. It helps you identify those positive outliers that you should probably try to scale across the command.
Okay, so the rubric and the status spectrum make the input inclusive and contextual, but we still haven't assigned any weight.
Not yet.
The real philosophical shift comes with layer 2, criticality factors. This is the mechanism that prevents a minor administrative flaw from ever distracting the commander from a major strategic risk.
This is the genius move, as one of the sources describes it. Every single line, in every single rubric, across every functional area, logistics, maneuver, intelligence, you name it, is assigned a static, unchanging criticality factor.
Okay.
This factor is the objective measure of that requirement's relevance to the overall strategic goal, which in this case is maintaining the EFDL deterrence posture. It pre-prioritizes the assessment automatically.
Static is a really important word there. So I have to ask the challenging question. If the criticality factor is static, doesn't that make the model rigid?
That's a great question.
I mean, if the strategic environment changes rapidly, won't the assigned criticality become outdated? Won't you be forcing the command to address tasks that aren't really critical anymore just because the model says so?
That's the core challenge in designing a system like this, and the sources do address it. The criticality factors are static, but they're static for the duration of a defined campaign plan.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, if the plan is a 2-year CUAS campaign, those factors are locked for those 2 years. They are set at the highest levels of command, and they reflect the theory of victory. They aren't meant to be agile day to day.
I see.
If the strategic environment fundamentally shifts and you need to change a criticality factor, that implies the theory of victory itself has to be revalidated. And that's the ultimate decision for a theater commander, not a staff officer adjusting a spreadsheet.
That makes a lot of sense. It locks the staff into prioritizing the commander's stated objectives rather than just whatever is easiest to fix. So let's detail the 4 levels, starting with the highest. Critical.
Critical tasks are the absolute foundation of mission success. If you fail here, the result is immediate mission failure or an unacceptable strategic risk to the EFDL.
Like what?
For example, ensuring that 8 brigade combat teams can safely conduct a 100-mile displacement maneuver under contested conditions. If the failure of their CUAS protection means those BCTs are immediately vulnerable, that is critical. A low status on a critical task demands attention within the hour.
Okay, next down is essential. Still high priority, but maybe with a little more breathing room.
Essential tasks are high priority. Failure here causes significant degradation or immediate operational risk. It demands rapid, often immediate mitigation, but the failure itself doesn't instantly compromise the whole campaign.
Right.
Think of it like a major breach in a firewall. You have to fix it now before the intrusion turns into a total system collapse. A failure here guarantees the commander sees it, but it might not halt all other operations.
Then we drop into the management layer. Significant.
Significant tasks are important for efficient operations. They have to be monitored closely, but they're generally tasks the staff can manage without escalating to the commander every day. Failure here, it introduces friction. You slow down, you become less fuel efficient, communications might degrade.
But it's not an existential threat.
Exactly. It does not threaten the core strategic objective. These are usually tasks related to optimization or, secondary sustainment efforts.
And finally, the lowest weight, which must not draw resources away from the top 2 tiers.
Enhancing tasks are pure force multipliers. They are opportunities. Their absence causes zero harm to the core mission. Their presence, however, makes the force faster, more lethal, or significantly more efficient.
So these are pursued when you have extra capacity.
When there's reserve capacity or as morale-building exercises. But the weighting ensures that even perfect execution of an enhancing task can't offset a failure in a critical area. The system inherently stops busy work from ever being rewarded with strategic priority.
And crucially, this pre-prioritization raises another potential friction point. If the staff knows which tasks are critical and which are enhancing, won't they be incentivized to game the system?
Good point.
To prioritize only the critical tasks that move the progress bar, and maybe neglect some friction in those significant areas that could eventually cascade into a major failure.
That is a real risk in any metric-driven system. But the compounding knowledge model uses the AI engine, which we're about to discuss, to mitigate this. First, the dashboards track effort, the tachometer on all weighted tasks, not just the critical ones. If the tachometer shows massive effort on a few critical tasks but ignores 50 significant ones, the commander sees that imbalance. The staff is hyper-focused, maybe burning out, or creating long-term structural debt.
I see. And the second mitigation.
The rubric is designed so that sustained low or fail ratings in a significant area often contain a rule that automatically elevates them to a new, higher-weighted critical task once a predefined risk threshold is crossed.
So the system actually anticipates the gaming incentive and uses the resulting behavior to self-correct the strategic assessment.
That's fascinating. Okay, we've established the improved input, the rubrics, and the necessary weighting, the criticality factors. But the compounding knowledge piece, that really hinges on the technology that processes all this narrative, weighted data over time.
Longitudinally, yeah.
And the sources point to the Maven Smart System, which is powered by Llama-based AI agents.
The AI is the analytical backbone here. The old system was a snapshot in time. This is a sophisticated, real-time movie generator.
We're talking about the AI pipeline, or AIP. And the crucial detail is why they use a Llama-based large language model, an LLM. Traditional systems just use simple parsing algorithms looking for keywords. But here, the input is natural language, that 5Ws narrative.
So the AI isn't just counting how many times a word appears. It's actually interpreting the relationship between the who, the what, the where, the when, and most importantly, the why.
Exactly. The LLM agent ingests that natural language text. It compares the contextual narrative against the specific rubric criteria, and it also references the static criticality factor assigned to that line item. It needs to interpret the nuance.
For example,
If the input says generator failures caused gaps, the AI needs to understand that generator failures are an equipment reliability issue, not a manpower issue, and it has to relate that failure directly back to that critical condition of continuous coverage. Only an advanced model can reliably manage that kind of contextual mapping.
and this is where the compounding knowledge truly manifests itself, the longitudinal analysis.
Yes. The AI doesn't just score today's report. It measures the delta, the change between the last input and the present one. It tracks how the context and the status evolve over time.
So if a critical task moves from low to medium,
The AI measures the specific achievement that caused that shift, and it records it. This continuous ingestion of structured human judgment at regular intervals, say weekly or daily, it creates what the sources call the heartbeat for the entire strategic campaign.
and that longitudinal tracking allows the commander to move past simply asking, "Are we ready now?" to the far more important question.
Are we moving quickly enough to be ready when the strategy demands it?
That's the key.
Think about the 2-year timeline for that CUAS campaign. If you're fielding capabilities at a rate that only gets you to 50% readiness by month 23, that's a strategic failure. The longitudinal analysis allows the commander to actually forecast that failure years in advance by analyzing the tempo of weighted progress.
Okay, let's discuss the key mathematical change that makes that tempo calculation so meaningful. Weighted progress. How does this system ensure effort is rewarded strategically and not just, volumetrically?
This is the core mathematical differentiator. Progress is calculated not by the total volume or number of tasks completed.
Which is how most organizations do it.
It's how almost everyone does it. Here, it's calculated by the accumulated weight of critical and essential tasks that have been resolved. The weights are based on those factors we discussed. Critical has the highest weight, enhancing has the lowest.
So if a staff member completes, say, 10 enhancing tasks perfectly, they get 10 superior ratings. What does that do to the overall progress bar?
It barely moves the needle. You get the positive feedback, sure, the superior rating shows up, but your overall strategic progress percentage might go up by 0.05%.
And on the other hand,
Conversely, if you resolve one single complex critical task, moving it from low to high GH, your progress bar jumps significantly, maybe 5%, even 10%, depending on the campaign design. This mathematically forces the organization's energy toward its core strategic goals. You're calculating progress toward mission success, not just activity volume.
this sounds incredibly powerful, but we need to touch on the technical architecture to understand how it's actually useful across a massive multinational theater like USAREUR-AF. The sources mention the platform operates within the Arbiter app and the Agora architecture, and it resides on the Mission Partner Network. Why are those details so critical?
Those details are all about interoperability and security, which are absolutely non-negotiable for NATO operations.
Right.
The Mission Partner Network, or MPN, and systems like BICS are the only way to share sensitive military data securely with allied nations like Poland or Romania. If this assessment model were just locked inside the U.S. military's secure network, it would defeat its own purpose because the EFDL is an allied operation.
So implementing it on the Arbiter app within that Agora architecture, that ensures two things: allied access and unified data presentation.
Exactly. If a Polish staff officer accessing the system through BICS submits an input identifying a logistical bottleneck that has been designated as critical to the overall campaign plan, that input is instantaneously ingested, weighted, and reflected correctly on the U.S. commander's dashboard.
No delay.
No consolidation delay, no translation barrier. The risk assessment is shared in real time based on those pre-approved criticality factors. The technical architecture is what enables the real-time weighted visibility you need for effective deterrence across a seamless alliance.
That real-time integration across national boundaries, that's what makes this model so dynamic in a coalition environment. It forces unified prioritization.
Yeah.
So we've moved past the static spreadsheet and into this dynamic, weighted, longitudinal data being analyzed by an LLM. Now, how does the commander, who has very limited time, actually interpret this vast complexity?
Right, how do you make it simple?
Exactly. And the sources offer this brilliant car dashboard analogy: 3 key indicators that synthesize the entire weighted campaign status into immediate actionable insight.
And the visualization is the translation layer. It completely shifts the commander's role from being an auditor, hunting through reports, to being a diagnostician who can immediately frame targeted questions. They're just looking at 3 critical dials.
Okay, let's look at dial 1, the tachometer. This measures the weight of effort, or the RPMs. How hard is the staff working?
This is tracking the raw energy expenditure. Staff inputs, ticket closures, activity levels across all the weighted tasks. But the criticality integration is vital here.
How so?
If the tachometer is in the red line maximum effort, it signals the staff is exceptionally busy. Okay. But if the AI determines that this high effort is disproportionately focused on low leverage enhancing or significant tasks, while the critical ones aren't being touched,
Then it's a warning sign.
it's a huge strategic warning sign about focus, not just activity.
It tells the commander, your team is running the engine too hard, but they might be running it in the wrong gear, just burning fuel for no strategic gain.
Correct. It separates effort from outcome. Which brings us to dial 2, the speedometer. This measures the actual operational tempo.
The actual speed of progress toward the end state.
And this is where the weighting becomes brutally objective. The speedometer calculation is entirely dependent on the clearance rate of critical and essential items only.
Only those 2.
Only those 2. If the staff clears 50 significant tasks in a week but makes 0 progress on critical or essential ones, the speedometer stays glued to 0 mph.
So activity could be high, but tempo is 0.
Exactly. High tachometer, 0 speedometer. It immediately punishes busy work that doesn't advance the strategic frontier. And finally, dial 3, the odometer, the measure of distance or progress. The odometer is the ultimate descriptive measure of success. It translates all that complex weighted progress the AI has calculated over time into a simple, tangible measure of campaign completion. It says in plain English, you are 35% to objective or 65% of deterrence posture achieved. It synthesizes all the complexity into an undeniable measure of distance traveled.
Okay, so now we synthesize the readings to generate diagnostic insights. Cross-referencing these 3 dials, that lets the commander instantly categorize the state of the campaign and formulate targeted questions for intervention. Let's go through the 3 scenarios from the sources.
Scenario A, high tachometer, but a low speedometer.
The staff is working flat out, redlining the engine, but they are barely moving.
The diagnosis is spinning wheels. Maximum energy expenditure with minimal actual output on high-priority tasks. The key decision point here is to identify the structural friction. Do we need to surge massive resources to smash through whatever this bottleneck is? Or do we need to fundamentally reassess if the objectives we've assigned are even physically achievable with the current resources?
It forces a self-correction back into the model itself.
Absolutely. The question it frames for the future is, what specific structural barrier is decoupling our high effort from our zero speed? And that question immediately leads the command to define a new rubric line, maybe a critical one, explicitly designed to measure and enforce the resolution of that newly identified bottleneck.
Okay, scenario B, high speedometer so, rapid ticket closure on critical and essential tasks, but a low odometer. The overall strategic distance hasn't decreased.
This is maybe the most dangerous scenario of all. Treadmill. Everyone is fast, everyone feels productive, but the strategic goal remains just as distant as it was before.
That's a scary thought.
It is profoundly worrying because it suggests the system is being executed flawlessly, yet it's failing. The decision point here isn't operational, it's strategic. The commander has to pivot the entire approach because the activities, even though they're highly weighted, are not achieving the intended strategic effects. The plan is flawed, not the execution.
So the staff is succeeding at the metrics, but the metrics themselves aren't linked to reality. This is where the model forces the command to question its own fundamental assumptions.
Indeed. The critical framing question for the future is massive. Is our theory of victory correct? Are our assigned criticality factors actually relevant to the end state we want? It forces accountability for the strategic design itself. The model provides an undeniable data point suggesting you may be winning the battles, closing tickets, but you are losing the war, not moving the odometer.
And finally, scenario C, low tachometer, but a high speedometer.
This is the dream state. This is flow state. The system is achieving massive effects, high speed, but it's doing so efficiently with reserve energy and low effort.
Diagnosis is clear.
It's clear. The methodology, the resources, the prioritization, it's all highly successful and optimized. The immediate decision point is to seize the opportunity, expand the scope of the campaign, or aggressively accelerate the timeline.
And the question for the future focuses on scaling that success.
Exactly. Where else on the Eastern Flank, or even in other theaters, can we immediately deploy this specific successful methodology? It turns a successful assessment into an actionable playbook for rapid strategic expansion.
Let's ground this whole thing in the real-world operational example from the source material, the EFDL counter-UAS campaign. The shift here is profound. You're moving from just counting the number of CUAS weapons you own to assessing whether 8 Brigade Combat Teams, or BCTs, are actually operationally ready to survive a contested 100-mile movement.
It's the perfect illustration of how the rubric forces context and strategic relevance. So let's look at 4 specific examples that show interaction between the criteria, the human input via the 5 Ws, and the AI-derived status.
Okay, example 1. Mobile integrated shielding. This is explicitly marked as critical.
Right. Failure means unacceptable risk to the maneuver force.
And the criteria for high status.
That all 8 BCTs must possess integrated CUAS, so that's both kinetic kill and electronic warfare, and be capable of dynamic movement while maintaining that protective bubble.
And what was the staff input narrative?
The staff used the 5 Ws to report 1st and 3rd BCTs who completed fielding of mobile interceptors at the Grafenwar training area, where this week Winter replaced handheld drone busters, but software integration with the EW systems is lagging. Why?
That why is the strategic vulnerability. Progress was made, but the critical integrated capability is missing.
And so the result is a medium status. The system recognizes the effort. 2 BCTs are partially ready, but because the core critical capability, the integrated shielding, isn't fully realized, it can't be a HEH. And the cost of that medium status is that those 2 BCTs, while better off, are still highly vulnerable to a coordinated drone attack. The commander knows if we use these BCTs today, we are accepting massive risk because of a software flaw.
Okay, next, another critical task. 247 sensor saturation. Failure here means you're blind.
The criteria for high status is absolute. Divisional air defense has to maintain persistent radar and optical tracking without any gaps over the maneuver corridor for 7 continuous days.
And the staff reported initial success, showing effort.
They did, they reported. Radar platoons who successfully rotated shifts, across the entire sector, where for 48 continuous hours, but generator failures caused 3 distinct 2-hour coverage gaps over the weekend. Why?
That failure of continuity violates the critical condition. So what's the result?
Automatic fail triggered. Even with 48 hours of successful operation, which is high activity, the violation of that continuous clause is a fatal flaw for a deterrence posture.
The cost is huge.
Immense. Those 2-hour gaps are windows for enemy surveillance, targeting, pre-positioning. The automatic fail instantly prioritizes solving the generator reliability issue over, say, acquiring brand new radar equipment.
Let's look at an essential task. NATO plug-and-fight interoperability. Failure here is high operational risk, hindering allied synchronization.
Right. The criteria for high status demands seamless, digital, real-time exchange of air tracks between U.S. and host nation units, specifically Polish and Romanian units. It's about allowing one nation to instantly hand over air defense responsibility to the other as units maneuver across borders.
And the input.
Polish air defense, who linked successfully with the U.S. command post, at the Suwalki corridor border, where, during Tuesday's exercise, when allowing seamless track handover and target engagement coordination. Why?
Perfect fulfillment of the criteria.
So, result, high GH status. This success immediately contributes significant weight to the overall campaign progress because it's an essential task. It reinforces that the concept of allied seamlessness is being achieved.
Okay, finally, let's look at an enhancing task. Signature management, a force multiplier for deception.
The criteria for high status here involved e-warfare units successfully projecting false electronic signatures decoys to lure enemy drone swarms away from the main body of the BCTs.
And the input showed exceptional skill.
It did. EW teams, who successfully lured red team drones into a predefined kill box, where during Thursday's field exercise, when by expertly mimicking the signature of a BCT headquarters, why?
So what's the result?
Superior status. This is immediately flagged as a best practice. The commander should study that team's technique, maybe fund training to replicate it, but because it's enhancing its contribution to the odometer, the actual progress of the 2-year plan is marginal. It's a great local win, but it doesn't solve the core survival requirement.
The beauty of this model is really how it aggregates these specific, contextualized inputs back into that high-level dashboard for the commander. It turns granular operational status into genuine strategic insight.
Right, so let's synthesize the criticality problem first, using the Tachometer insight. Let's imagine a typical reporting period. The staff reports heavy activity, lots of high GHs and superiors on low-weighted tasks. Things like current platform modification, which is significant, and signature management, which is enhancing.
So they're busy, they feel successful.
They're very busy, but the mobile integrated shielding, which is critical, remains low because 4 BCTs are still stuck on handheld drone busters because of that persistent software integration lag.
So what's the dashboard reading?
The tachometer is pegged high. It's in the red line. The speedometer, however, is low, maybe 10 mph, because the weighted progress on critical tasks is minimal. The odometer is crawling.
And what's the unfiltered immediate insight the commander gets from this severe decoupling?
Insight is surgical. It's our staff is focused on optimizing what we already have, old drones, decoys, because it's easier and it's rewarding. But we are failing to protect the main body of the force, which is the critical task.
And the resulting order.
Equally surgical. Immediate cessation of all non-essential retrofitting projects, surge effort, funding, and personnel directly into resolving the software integration for mobile shielding. We must stop doing the easy, rewarding work and focus exclusively on the critical friction point.
That is the difference between managing activity and managing strategic risk. The system stops rewarding busyness when the core mission is at stake.
Exactly. Now let's look at the tempo problem using the speedometer insight, specifically for that 2-year CUAS timeline. Here we rely on the longitudinal tracking from the AI.
Okay, so the scenario is that over 6 months of weighted reporting, the inputs show the command successfully moved only 2 of the 8 BCTs from the vulnerable handheld drone busters to the necessary truck-mounted integrated systems.
The critical requirement, yeah.
Right.
So the AI processes that tempo data against the timeline, and the commander's realization is immediate and mathematically stark. At the current rate of fielding 1 BCT every 3 months, they will need 18 more months just to field the remaining 6 BCTs. If the campaign timeline demanded all 8 be ready in 24 months, 2 years, they are already too slow by a full quarter, just 6 months in.
And the commander can intervene with a high degree of confidence.
They can. They see immediately. Our tempo is insufficient to meet the required EFDL timeline. They have 18 months left, but they know the current process will take 18 months just to complete the fielding, leaving 0 reserve time for training or validation. This prompts immediate intervention.
Like what?
Renegotiating contracts, declaring a resource shortfall to higher command, radically simplifying the fielding process, all while the campaign is still relatively young.
So this model really ensures that a low rating on a critical deterrence requirement is never masked or diluted by an abundance of successful enhancing data.
Right. It prevents the command from being paralyzed by the sea of green data. That's the classic spreadsheet trap.
It reestablishes the weighted truth about operational readiness.
It does. It ensures that every ounce of effort is directed toward the tasks that define mission success, providing not just an assessment, but a powerful diagnostic tool for immediate strategic course correction.
So this deep dive into the compounding knowledge assessment model, it really reveals a powerful framework for managing complexity. It solves these endemic problems of organizational assessment by moving far beyond just binary data, seamlessly integrating structured human judgment through those 5Ws rubrics, and using Llama-based AI to provide that sophisticated longitudinal analysis.
And most importantly, it implements the criticality factors to weight progress based on strategic relevance, making sure that the commander is hyper-focused on solving critical problems, not just rewarding staff activity. And that three-dial dashboard gives an instantaneous diagnosis of the campaign's health and trajectory.
So why should this framework matter to you, listening at home? Whether you're planning a massive software deployment, managing complex project portfolios, or running a large business division, why should you care?
It matters because in any resource-constrained environment, defining what is critical versus what is merely enhancing is the single most important act of leadership.
Full stop.
Full stop. By adopting this kind of weighting, you ensure that your limited budget and your staff's finite time are addressing the essential problems that threaten the company's survival, not just optimizing opportunities that would be nice to have. This framework forces disciplined prioritization and stops your organizational energy from being wasted in that spinning wheel scenario.
And that brings us back to the most profound conceptual challenge this model surfaces, which was scenario B, the treadmill diagnosis.
High speed, low distance.
High speed, low distance. Everyone is performing perfectly on the metrics, but the strategic goal is stagnant.
And the final provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. The model successfully holds the execution accountable by tracking speed and effort. But when the system tells you that you are executing the weighted plan perfectly, yet you are still not achieving the strategic end state, how often do you need to stop and question the very foundation of your strategy? How often do you need to accept that the assigned criticality factors themselves, the core assumptions you made about what truly matters, might be irrelevant to the current reality, forcing you to question the entire core theory of victory? It's the highest form of accountability, forcing the command to audit its own strategic wisdom.